Excellencies, members of the Indonesian Council of World Affairs, distinguished guests, and especially the Honorable Speaker of the Indonesian Parliament, Bapak Agung Laksono, on behalf of the Embassy of the United States of America, Jakarta, and the Indonesian Council of World Affairs, I would like to welcome you to this extraordinary session. Extraordinary because no less than the Honorable Secretary of State, Dr. Rice, is going to give us a speech on the United States, Indonesia, and the world today. As you all know, any statement or speech made by a high official of the US administration is usually thoroughly analyzed by the rest of the world, since it could have a significant impact on any member of the world community. This is all the more so if a message is being conveyed by a special official like Dr. Rice. I would like to stress the expression of special because Dr. Rice is indeed very special in many respects. She is known to be an understanding but very tough negotiator. She has a highly analytical mind, but has also the capacity to be down to earth. According to confidential information, it is extremely difficult for anybody not to be persuaded by Dr. Rice's well-argumented views. Even in cases where foreign countries' negotiators could not accept her sometimes controversial proposals, they were impressed by her intellectual arguments and by her warm personal approach. In other words, Dr. Rice has succeeded in combining supreme intelligence with disarming charm. It is therefore a privilege for us this morning to enjoy the presence of the Honorable Secretary of State. Distinguished guests, I would like to inform you that Dr. Rice will be kind enough to respond to questions and remarks raised by you following her presentation. For this purpose, Dr. Dino Patijalal, a member of the Executive Board of the Indonesian Council of World Affairs and a special assistant to the Indonesian President, will be pleased to moderate the discussion. May I now ask Dr. Rice to start your speech. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Dr. Serikat, for that wonderful introduction. It's an introduction I'll never quite forget, so thank you very much for that. I want to thank you also for this opportunity to address the Indonesia World Affairs Council. Gatherings of this kind of people who are interested in foreign affairs from all walks of life are extremely important to the functioning of democracy, and I congratulate you and your board and your patrons for the excellent work that this council does. It's a pleasure to be here in Jakarta. Yesterday, I had the honor of meeting with President Yudhoyono. He shared with me his vision of a united and successful and democratic Indonesia, a vision that is increasingly coming true under his leadership. Today, more Indonesians than ever enjoy lives of peace and opportunity and freedom. And the United States wants to help you expand democracy's benefits to every citizen in this country. The United States has been a Pacific nation for nearly 2 centuries. And to this day, our unfailing support for Asia's success remains rooted in the same basic principles: the promotion of peace and rule of law, freedom of commerce and exchange, and support for the just aspirations of all people. These principles are now at the heart of our emerging partnership with Indonesia, a young democracy with which we share traditions of tolerance and moderation and unity and diversity, or as you say, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika. Few nations are as diverse as Indonesia. Your archipelago of more than 17,000 islands, of course, stretches the entire distance of the continental United States. And it is home to 240 million people. representing hundreds of different ethnicities and cultures and every world religion, especially Islam. For every 8 Muslims worldwide, 1 is a citizen of Indonesia. In the past several years, Indonesians have shaken off the legacy of autocratic rule and have begun to build a distinctly Indonesian democracy, drawing on their own customs and cultures, their own history and experience. Today, Indonesia is succeeding not despite its diversity, but because of it. Diversity in Indonesia is a source of strength that lifted your people through the horrific trial of the tsunami. In the face of nature's fury, Indonesians united with courage and compassion and countless acts of heroism. One such hero is Mrs. Ernie Minur, a nurse and midwife in Aceh who lost everything in the tsunami. She is here today. What a story. Mrs. Minur turned a battered, empty shop into a bustling clinic for women and girls. That despite the fact that she had lost her husband and her 3 daughters in the tsunami. Since then, she has treated hundreds of patients and helped pregnant women living in refugee camps to deliver their babies in safety. You are a real heroine. Thank you so much. Because of people like Mrs. Minur, the Indonesian people transformed an unspeakable tragedy into a triumph for peace in Aceh. With nearly 250,000 souls lost, citizens of conscience rallied across the country to help the people of Aceh. They did so not as Javanese or Sudanese or Acehnese, but as Indonesians. The Aceh Peace Accord is a hopeful step toward the vision of Indonesia whole, free, and at peace, and the United States is proud to support your achievement. In the wake of the tsunami, the United States rushed to help our friends in need. Survivors still remember the USS Lincoln and American helicopters as images of hope. My government's response was carried forward by the compassion of thousands of individual Americans, most of whom are ordinary men and women, even children, who donated small sums online or in their churches or their synagogues or their mosques, or mailed what few dollars they could to the Red Cross. That desire to help continues today, as American aid workers in Aceh work with you to build clinics and schools and a vital road to unite the province. And as we saw during the tsunami, America's engagement with Indonesia is more than a partnership of government. It is an alliance of peoples. Your success is our success, and we want to help you reap the full benefits of democracy. President Yudhoyono has defined his government's mission as pro-growth, pro-jobs, pro-poor. And we support his campaign to root out those vices and hinder human potential everywhere. What Indonesians call KKN, corruption, collusion, and nepotism. American judicial experts are helping Indonesians to strengthen the rule of law and ensure equal justice for every member of this society, from the richest businessman to the poorest farmer. We're also working with you to enhance economic development and social mobility through education. We've opened our doors to Indonesian students who have enriched our nation and returned to be leaders of your country. In fact, President Yudhoyono and 12 members of his cabinet studied in American universities. President Bush is now advancing our commitment to education in this country. When he visited Bali in 2003, he announced a landmark $157 million initiative to train Indonesian teachers. Today, graduates of this program are leading classes for over 300,000 Indonesian boys and girls across the country. And yesterday, I had the pleasure of visiting the Makmura School right here in Jakarta. Our Alliance of Peoples is part of a broad Pacific community that has united Americans and Asians through decades of travel and exchange and immigration. Thousands of Americans reside in Southeast Asia, drawn here by your commerce and your culture, or both. And likewise, millions of my fellow citizens trace their roots to this region. Vietnamese and Cambodians and Filipinos and Indonesians all have made new homes in places like Orange County and California and Houston and Texas and Northern Virginia. They're chasing the American dream and adding to the American character. I focus on people today for a reason, for it is the people of Southeast Asia who have transformed the promise of Southeast Asia. Your challenge now is to expand the peace, the opportunity, and the freedom that we see in much of Southeast Asia to all of Southeast Asia. To achieve this great purpose, the United States is eager to work with ASEAN through our new enhanced partnership, and we look to Indonesia as the region's largest country, a founding member of ASEAN, and a rising democracy to play a leadership role in Southeast Asia and in the dynamic, changing East Asia in general. So much has changed in Southeast Asia, and changed so quickly. Just consider the picture of 3 decades ago. Cross-border war, communist subversion, anxiety that America was literally in retreat, fearful talk of a bamboo curtain being drawn across the Pacific. But in the decades that followed, the nations of Southeast Asia realized a future of peaceful cooperation through ASEAN. The United States backed your vision with our sustained diplomatic and economic and military cooperation. And today, this region is a pillar of stability in Asia. The United States has now resumed military ties with Indonesia, as this nation has chosen a democratic path. We look forward to continued progress toward greater accountability and complete reform in the military sphere. A reformed and effective Indonesian military is in the interest of everyone, because threats to our common security have not disappeared. The greatest challenges now emerge more from within states than between them, and they cannot be met by any one nation alone. Multilateral cooperation is essential, so the United States is working together with our 2 treaty allies in this region, Thailand and the Philippines, and we are strengthening our partnership with ASEAN through institutions like APEC and the ASEAN Regional Forum to confront today's global threats. One such threat is posed by criminals who exploit this region's growing openness. Southeast Asia is more water than land, and maritime security is a top priority. We're working with Indonesia and others to close this region's waterways to drug smugglers and human traffickers and pirates and weapons proliferators. We also stand ready to help Indonesia and Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand to secure the Straits of Malacca, through which 1/4 of the world's oil and trade pass every year. Another global threat is the spread of epidemics like SARS and HIV/AIDS, and now the threat of avian influenza. At the United Nations last year, President Bush launched a global partnership to confront the threat of avian influenza. This new partnership helped to coordinate the recent donors conference in Beijing, which raised close to $2 billion. The United States is now contributing an additional $11.5 million this year to fight avian influenza in Indonesia. Our nations are joining with Singapore to create an early warning program in your country that we hope to use as a model in other parts of the region. Finally, but not least, we must continue to fight terrorism in Southeast Asia. In the past several years, we have seen the true threat posed by violent extremists who use terror as a weapon. Groups like Abu Sayyaf and Jemaah Islamiyah want to destroy this region's dynamism and the traditions of tolerance and turn Southeast Asia into, literally, a ring of fire. Asians know this all too well, especially Indonesians. Terrorist attacks in this country have killed hundreds of innocent Indonesians, many of whom were Muslims. The region knows that terrorists must be actively confronted, and the United States is helping in that fight. We are working alongside countries like Malaysia and Singapore, and to build the capacity of others, like the Philippines, who have the will to fight terrorism but need help with the means. Indonesia is bringing terrorists to justice, and these actions are empowering the people across the region who possess the most enduring force of all, the force of tolerance. Muslim citizens in Southeast Asia are uniting Islamic traditions with democratic principles and advancing the hope for peace in this region. The expansion of peace continues to create opportunities for men and women to transform their lives. Despite the difficulties of the late 1990s, the people of Southeast Asia have achieved an economic miracle. In the past generation, the wealth of this region doubled, then doubled again, lifting over 100 million people out of poverty. Economic cooperation has always been a central pillar of America's partnership with Southeast Asia, and we remain completely committed today to advancing our shared interest in economic growth, increased trade, and the reduction of poverty. The countries of Southeast Asia are making their mark on the global economy. Across the world, millions of people wake up every morning and they buy a cup of coffee made from beans grown in East Timor and Sumatra. They talk on mobile phones built in Thailand and the Philippines. They switch on computers manufactured in Malaysia, and in the coming years, many of the microchips that power those computers will bear the label Made in Vietnam. This progress is visible here in Indonesia, where the average worker is 4 times better off than his parents were. The economic growth that comes with increased free trade is thus vital to this region's continued success. The ASEAN group of countries is America's 4th largest trading partner, and we want to expand the benefits of this dynamic relationship to every person in Southeast Asia. We are elevating our relations with Vietnam in all areas, from our support for their efforts to join the WTO to our dialogue on human rights and fundamental freedom. We are also working through our Enterprise for ASEAN initiative to conclude free trade agreements with countries in this region that are committed to economic openness and reform. We have signed one with Singapore. We have ongoing discussions with Thailand, and just the other week, we began free trade negotiations with Malaysia. These are important steps toward our shared vision of a Pacific free trade community. Yet, despite growing trade, the economic miracle of Southeast Asia remains an elusive dream for millions who suffer in poverty. America is more committed than ever to helping them. In the Philippines, for example, we have brought internet access to 250,000 students in poor schools across Mindanao. We have also worked with Cambodia to improve its labor standards to attract foreign investment from responsible countries, many of whom employ young women. Through our Millennium Challenge Corporation, we want to reward countries, including countries like Indonesia, as they make progress to govern justly, advance economic freedom, and invest in their people. And of course, here in Indonesia, America has helped to establish thousands of healthcare centers and to train thousands of midwives who have saved the lives and dramatically improved the well-being of Indonesian mothers and children. As this region continues to develop and prosper, the already strong aspiration for freedom and self-government is also growing stronger, and the inspiring expansion of democracy is continuing. For all who believe that human beings are slaves to the forces of history, good and bad, I would simply refer them to the example of Southeast Asia. Democracy is a reality across much of this region today because people believed in it, and they worked for it, and they sacrificed to achieve it. 20 years ago, Filipino citizens braved violence and peacefully won their democracy through people power. 7 years later, Thai citizens mobilized for a democratic future. And today, the people of East Timor are building a democracy of their own. And the people of Indonesia have added their own chapter to the story of democracy in Southeast Asia. In 1999, as this nation prepared to go to the polls, cynics and skeptics counted you out. They said Indonesia was just too big and too fragile and too diverse for democracy. They were wrong. Then there were those who said that democracy could not be sustained. Indonesia silenced those doubts too. And in recent elections, which culminated on September 20th, 2004, a date now remembered as the largest single election turnout in human history, 117 million Indonesians voted freely for their next president and affirmed for the world the power of free men and women when given the opportunity to choose. Every young democracy in Southeast Asia now faces a similar challenge, building democratic institutions that function transparently and accountably. Institutions like the rule of law, an independent judiciary, and a free media help to ensure that leaders remain responsible to their people. In other places, however, democracy still faces determined opponents, and where freedom is under attack, it must be defended. For 15 years, the military dictatorship in Burma has held captive the democratic aspirations of the Burmese people, along with their most eloquent leader, Aung San Suu Kyi. A country that was once the jewel of Southeast Asia is now out of step with the entire modern experience of the region. A once thriving economy has collapsed. Universities that once attracted the best Asian minds are locked shut. The Burmese regime is now literally retreating into the depths of the country, closing its people off from the world and robbing them of their future. The United States applauds the recent efforts of ASEAN to support the just aspirations of the Burmese people. The United Nations Security Council has taken up the case of Burma, and so long as the proud people of this great nation remain oppressed, there can be no business as usual in Southeast Asia. I want to thank the Indonesian government and President Yudhoyono for their efforts on behalf of freedom in Burma. As we see in our growing cooperation on nearly every challenge of the day, the United States and the democracies of Southeast Asia, especially Indonesia, are building a true partnership, defined not just by the immediate threats we oppose, but by the enduring ideals we seek to promote: peace and security, opportunity and prosperity, freedom and democracy, justice and tolerance. These principles are the source of success, past, present, and future, for large multi-ethnic nations like Indonesia and the United States, as well as others like India and Brazil and South Africa. This is the course of the future. Countries like these could not be more different, but in their commitment to democracy and in their effort to build unity from diversity, nations like ours are an example for the world that diversity is a source of strength. And in a world in which difference is still a license to kill, that is an extraordinarily important message. In the 21st century, we must use our democratic partnerships to help people everywhere who long for a more hopeful future. The partnership between the United States and Indonesia will greatly contribute to that work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rice, for that very excellent and thoughtful speech. We now come to the question and answer session. We have 20 minutes, so a very short time. and we'd like to get as wide range of questions as possible. I would like to give the first question to a member of the council, and a member of council has assigned by Emil Salim to be the questioner, but I would like to appeal, because we only have 20 minutes, be very brief. We only have time for one speech already, which is from Dr. Rice, and not more speeches. Please, by Emil Salim.
Your Excellency, United States is a powerful country. In that context, the question is how to use the power. Is it possible, Your Excellency, that the United States put more emphasis on soft power rather than hard power? To use the power to promote multilateralism rather than unilateralism. To use the power also to more for poverty eradication rather than the other. In brief, is it possible that the United States promote the use of power which is benign and more humane? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the excellent question. I think the United States and the people of the United States have always felt that the United States is at its best in the world when it is able to combine power and principle, values and compassion. And in fact, I think you will see that over the last several years, the United States has tried to do all of that. First of all, on the matter of leading from principle, there is no doubt that President Bush has made very clear that the centerpiece of American foreign policy, our goal of American foreign policy, is to unite with other democratic states around the world to make available to those who have long been denied freedom the opportunity for choice and for freedom. The United States simply doesn't accept the notion that there are corners of the world in which people are either not ready for democracy, or they're not capable of democracy, or they don't somehow deserve democracy. And so the first point about American foreign policy is that I think it really does proceed from that principle of the importance of democracy. It is rare, very rare, that military power is used in that course. In fact, the use of military power in Iraq and Afghanistan was to overthrow hostile regimes that in both cases had repressed their own people, but also were a threat to the international community, as seen by Saddam Hussein's wars in his region, but also by the Taliban's support of al-Qaeda. And so military force was used in those cases to overthrow brutal but dangerous regimes. It is then the obligation of the United States or any others to make certain that we are then creating the conditions, once those regimes are overthrown, that those people have a chance at democracy. So democracy promotion remains the core, but the use of military power is a rare occasion. It is more likely and more usual that the spread of democracy is through what you've referred to as soft power, that is through example, through speaking out for people who are seeking democracy and freedom, supporting education around the world as the United States does, supporting women's rights and empowerment as the United States does, and perhaps most importantly, trying to support economic development through free trade and through poverty alleviation. It may be well to note that under President Bush, American official development assistance has almost tripled for Africa and doubled for, and development assistance has doubled for Latin America. Worldwide, through programs like the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS relief, the Millennium Challenge account, the United States is doing its part to help alleviate poverty, to help fight disease. And finally, I think we all believe that one of the strongest elements of American influence, I'll not call it power, I'll call it American influence in the world, is that as a country that is itself extremely diverse, where people have come from every corner of the earth, and where people in America can trace their heritage to almost every corner of the earth, that it is that principle or that belief in diversity, that example of diversity, that is one of our greatest strengths. It's why I'm always a proponent of having people come to the United States, study in the United States, get to know Americans, have educational and cultural exchanges. I'm a professor at Stanford University on leave currently, but I'm still a professor at Stanford University. And one of the great joys of teaching at a university like Stanford is you have students from all over the world. And so I think, too,